Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today in our trip through the northern half of Portugal, we first visit Guimarães, the city where it is said that Portugal was born. Then we move to Porto, one of the most visited cities in Portugal, and where we a pleasant afternoon walk. And if you like our video, do not forget to like it, subscribe and activate notifications so that you know when we upload a new video. Guimarães, which has about 150,000 inhabitants, is said to be the cradle of Portugal, as this is where the first king of Portugal was born, Alfonso Henrique. As for parking, you will have no problems, as you have several free parking near the historic centre. And for those who travel by motorhome, you also have a free caravan area. And as always, we leave you the indication of these parking in Google Maps. We start our visit at a beautiful enlarged square, called Praça da República do Brasil, at one of whose ends we find the beautiful Church of Our Lady of Consolation, also known as Church of St. Walter, patron of the city, and of which you will have a beautiful panorama from the other end, at the top of the square. From the top of the square, we enter the historic centre, and after passing next to the small Chapel do Senhor dos Passos and the Museum of Religious Art Alberto Sampaio, we arrive at a square called Largo de Oliveira, a beautiful square surrounded by porches, in which we protect ourselves from the rain that begins to fall. Here the first thing that draws our attention is the so-called Padrao do Salado, medieval monument symbol of the city, to commemorate the victory of the Portuguese against the Muslims in the Battle of Salado in 1339. This beautiful monument is located at the gates of the Church of Our Lady of Oliveira, whose history dates back to the 10th century, when a monastery was founded here. The current temple was consecrated in the 14th century, and was collegiate until 1911, being a mixture of different styles, such as Gothic or the Manueline style of the bell tower, and in the interior stands a beautiful Baroque retable on the main altar. As a curiosity, to the right of the tower, we can see an ancient security system of the historic centre dating from the 17th century. At the other end of the square, we have the Antigos Pacos do Concello, where the old town hall of the city is located, and under whose gates we protect ourselves from the rain, which is falling stronger and stronger. On the other side of the portals, we find the beautiful Santiago Square, if placed doubtless the square with the most charm of Guimarães, and that impresses by the traditional architecture of its oldest houses. It owes its name to a legend, which says that the Apostle James brought an image of the Virgin Mary to the city, and placed it in a temple that was then in the square. At one end, we find the tourist office, by which we continue and reach the square where the municipal chamber is located where was the old convent of Santa Clara, which was the richest convent in the city until the year 1834. Surrounding the town hall, we arrive at the old walls, of which there are few remains, having in their origin 2 kilometers of perimeter and 8 access doors. Today part of that wall can be visited, and from here you will get beautiful views of the city. In front of the walls, we find the Praça de Madonna, where apart from the building that houses the courts of Guimarães, we find a sculpture of Countess Madonna Dias, who ruled the county jointly with her husband, continuing in the government after the death of this one, until her own death in the year 968. From this square we already have access to the so-called Sacred Hill, where is grouped some of the most important monuments of Guimarães, such as the impressive palace of the Dukes of Braganza, built in the 15th century by the first Duke of Braganza. The entrance cost €5, which deserves to pay, although it does not allow the entry of animals, so MIA had to stay at the entrance. Once inside, you start the tour through several rooms and lounges, some of them impressive size, and with an impressive collection of 17th century art, which includes tapestries, furniture, and woodworking. Built in Burgundy style, after serving as the residence of the Dukes of Braganza, the building was a military quarter in the 19th century. Reconstructed between the 30s and 60s of the 20th century, in 1959 it became the residence of President Antonio de Oliveira Salazar, being later restored for public use and becoming one of the most important museums in Portugal. After visiting the stays on the first floor, we reach the second floor, where we have a beautiful panoramic view of the porch courtyard of the 15th century, as well as an interesting perspective of the roof and the numerous and slender chimneys, of which there are 39 in total, although without a doubt what most attracts attention is the beautiful entrance portal to the chapel. On this upper floor, we continued our visit to the palace, for which they were the most private spaces and only used by the dukes. After our visit to the palace, and before arriving at the castle, we find the Church of St. Michael, a small Romanesque-style church where the first king of Portugal was baptized. And so we get to the Castle of Guimaraes, located at the top of the sacred hill, and considered as one of the Seven Wonders of Portugal. The entrance price is €2, but if you buy the combined entrance with the palace it will cost you €6. The castle was built in the 10th century in wood and clay, to protect the monks from the attacks of the Arabs, although it was later rebuilt in stone, which is the appearance it has today. It is also of great historical importance, as it is said that the first king of Portugal was born in this castle, being later baptized in the small chapel of the Church of St. Michael. Although the interior is quite sober, it is worth visiting the walls and climbing to the Tower of Tribute, from which you will have an impressive panoramic view. And in this beautiful and peaceful place, where after the rain MIA takes advantage of to take a little sun, we end our visit to the beautiful Guimaraes and head to Porto. Porto is the second largest and most populous city in Portugal, and we could consider it as the capital of the northern part of the country, with a large historic centre considered a World Heritage Site. As for parking, you have several parking options, being one of the most recommended to park in the football stadium and take the metro, which in a short time takes us to the centre. We in the motorhome, we parked in the outskirts of the Porto, in a parking lot located next to one of the metro stations, specifically the Line F of the subway, which in a short time took us to the centre of Porto, to the Trinidad station. This station is located very close to the town hall, to which we arrived after a short walk. The imposing building situated on the highest part of the Allied Square was built in the 20th century in neoclassical style, lasting its construction almost 40 years, and in front of it we find a statue of Almeida Garrett, Portuguese writer and politician of the 19th century. The Allied Avenue, along with the Plaza de Liberdade, which is located in the lower part, constitutes the central square of Porto, surrounded by majestic modernist buildings from the late 19th and early 20th centuries, and being the place of celebrations such as the New Year. At the end of the square, we can see the famous Church of the Clergy, but before we catch attention, a curious store. The Church of the Clergy forms, next to its famous tower, a beautiful monumental set of the 18th century, built by the Brotherhood of the Poor Clergies, in a place known as the Hanged Man's Hill, since it is here where the executed were buried. The famous tower is the highest tower in Portugal, and its 76 meters high and 200 steps give a privileged panoramic view of Porto. We, as is our custom, get lost in the streets and alleys of Porto, in the direction of the Douro River, enjoying the historical centre declared the heritage of mankind. We arrive at a large square, the Praça do Infant Don Enrique, where we can see an imposing building, the Palace of the Stock Exchange, the seat of the Commercial Association of the city, and built on an old Franciscan convent, and that can be visited guided every half an hour. In the center of the square is the statue of Infant Don Enrique, born in Porto and known as the Sailor, whose finger marks the direction where the colonies he conquered are located. From the Palace of the Stock Exchange, we arrive in very short time to the Douro River, which here in Porto leans into the Atlantic Ocean, and we enjoy a beautiful walk at night through La Ribeira, declared cultural heritage of mankind, and one of the most famous and bustling places in the city, thanks to the beautiful colored facades of the buildings, and to the terraces that are filled with people, to eat codfish or drink a glass of wine overlooking the Douro. But undoubtedly the most outstanding is the Bridge of Don Louis I. This large metal bridge, built by an Eiffel disciple, was built between 1880 and 1923, connecting the two banks of the Douro, and from which you will have an impressive panoramic view from the top of it. By a chain of streets with a pretty strong climb, we arrived at the cathedral, our last stop since we were made a little late. This 12th century building is one of the oldest in Porto, and it is not only a cathedral, but a fortress cathedral, in front of which we find a statue of Vimara Perez, vassal of Alfonso III, of Galician origin and who conquered the north of Portugal and founded Guimarães, and is known as the first governor of Portugal. The cathedral is situated in the so-called Terreiro da Sé, where in addition to the cathedral and the Cabal House, where the so-called treasure museum is located, we find the impressive Bishop's Palace and a beautiful Pelourinho. And here, with stunning views of Porto and the Douro, we end our afternoon tour in Porto and head back to the interior of Portugal.